Hello everyone. Welcome to our YouTube channel, The World Times News by AI. So, let's start the video. An 85-year-old British citizen in Sudan was shot by snipers and his wife then died of starvation after they were left to fend for themselves by the British Embassy in Sudan, their family has told BBC News Arabic. Abdallah Sholgami lived with his 80-year-old disabled wife, Alawiya Rishwan, just over the road from the UK's diplomatic mission in Khartoum. But despite repeated calls for help, the London hotel owner was never offered support to leave Sudan, even when a British military team was sent to evacuate diplomatic staff. Instead, the elderly couple were told to go to an airfield 40 kilometers, 25 miles, outside Khartoum, which would have meant crossing a war zone, to board an evacuation flight. The UK Foreign Office acknowledged to the BBC that the Sholgamis' case was extremely sad, but added that our ability to provide consular assistance is severely limited and we cannot provide in-person support within Sudan. The violence was triggered by a power struggle between former allies, the leaders of the regular army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF. Just a few days into the conflict, the family began contacting the UK Embassy. The embassy was evacuated with the support of Britain's Army and Royal Air Force just over a week after the fighting began. The UK Embassy is a maximum 4 steps away, explained Mr. Sholgami's granddaughter, Azar, who grew up in Khartoum. I was informed they had 100 troops who came and evacuated their staff. They could not cross the road? I'm still very disappointed in them. Faced with starvation and with no water, Mr. Sholgami was forced to leave his wife to find help. While he was out, he was shot 3 times, in his hand, chest and lower back, by snipers. With no hospitals working where he was, Mr. Sholgami was then taken to a family member in another part of Khartoum and survived. But his wife was now left to fend for herself and it was impossible for any family to reach her in an area that was surrounded by snipers. The family continued to contact the UK Foreign Office's hotline to help Alawiya Rishwan, but she was stuck in the house without any help and was found dead by an official from the Turkish embassy a few days later. Her body remains in the house, unburied. The family says the UK government has done nothing to support them and have not been in touch since the 3rd of May, which was when the last evacuation flight to the UK took off. Azar Sholgami is distraught. What happened to my grandparents was a crime against humanity, not only by the RSF, not only by the Sudanese army, but by the British embassy, because they were the only ones that could have prevented this from happening to my grandparents, she told. Mr. Sholgami has now managed to escape to Egypt, where he is getting medical treatment after his wounds were operated on in Khartoum by his son, a doctor, without anesthetic. That is because only a handful of Khartoum's 88 hospitals remain open after weeks of fighting, according to Sudan's Doctors Union. Hospitals have often been targeted by both sides during the conflict. A BBC News Arabic investigation has uncovered disturbing evidence of possible war crimes being carried out on medical facilities and staff by both sides. The BBC team used satellite data and mapping tools, analyzed user-generated content on a huge scale, and spoke to dozens of doctors, to build a picture of exactly who may be committing war crimes. Ibn Sina Hospital is one of a number the BBC has identified as having been targeted in an airstrike or by artillery fire when medics were treating civilian patients. Dr. Allah is a surgeon at the hospital and was present when the attack happened on the 19th of April. Ibn Sina Hospital where I worked was hit by 3 bombs, while a 4th bomb hit the nurse's house which was entirely set on fire, he said. The duty to warn of any impending airstrike to ensure, to take due precaution, that all civilians are able to evacuate a hospital prior to an airstrike, that is very clear under the laws of war, according to Christian DeVos, an international criminal law expert with NGO Physicians for Human Rights. Looking at the images of the attack, forensic weapons expert Chris Cobb-Smith said it could have been caused by artillery fire. Uncertainty over the kind of weapon used means it is hard to be sure which side was responsible, or if this was a targeted attack. Another medical facility targeted was the East Nile Hospital, one of the last operating in that part of the capital. There have been reports of patients being forcibly evacuated from the building. But we have also spoken to witnesses who say civilians continue to be treated alongside the RSF soldiers. On the 1st of May, a public area next to the East Nile Hospital was hit by a Sudanese army airstrike. 5 civilians died in that attack. There was a further airstrike 2 weeks later, but there has been no independent confirmation of the number of injured. The World Health Organization has reported that 9 hospitals have been taken over by fighters from one side or the other. The preferential treatment of soldiers over civilians is not an appropriate use of a medical facility, and it may well constitute a violation of the laws of war, Mr. DeVos said. A political advisor to the RSF, Mustafa Mohammed Ibrahim, denied that they were preventing the treatment of civilians. He told the BBC, "Our forces are just spreading, and they are present. They are not occupying and don't stop civilians from being treated in these hospitals." The Sudanese army did not provide a response to this investigation's findings. There is also evidence of another potential war crime, the targeting of doctors. The BBC has seen social media messages threatening doctors by name, even sharing their ID number. The messages accuse them of supporting the RSF and receiving money from abroad. In a widely circulated video, Major General Tariq al-Hadi Kejab from the Sudanese army said, "The so-called Central Committee of Doctors should be named the Committee of Rebels." Sudanese doctors' organizations have been monitoring threats which they say are coming from both sides, and the BBC has spoken to doctors who have gone into hiding. "We know that this is a tactic that is used in wars, for pressure, that is illegal in all international laws. Unfortunately, this has pushed medical staff into a propaganda war between the RSF and the Sudanese army," said Dr. Mohammed Asa from the Sudanese American Physicians Association. Doctors around the world have been calling for an end to the targeting of their colleagues. At a conference in London last week, Sudan's Doctors for Human Rights said medical staff had been killed, ambulances targeted, and hospitals forced to close their doors. Dr. Ahmed Abbas said, "We're gathering all the evidence of these transgressions, which are crimes against humanity and war crimes, and this could be presented to international judicial authorities or national authorities in Sudan." Thanks.